military before I signed up for the military in 1975 and entered in 1976 at the age of 22 and served through Desert Storm, retiring in 1995. Okay, well, thank you for your service. He said, this is just a brief resume of myself, say, but what I want to write to you about the message that you put out at this time to Black America. I watched you sometime years ago when you were airing from a television station. I don't know what television station you saw me on. I'm trying to think about that one. And you still might you say, I don't know. So I hear you down President Obama. I guess he must be talking about recently when President Obama talked down to black men and the Democrat Party, which has never done nothing good for us, actually. Let me continue. It's saying, and I know they are not perfect. No party is, especially the fascist extreme Republicans under the chronic liar Donald Trump. I know that you said that you will not vote for Vice President Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and I assume you are persuading other black men to do the same. You have spoke of reparations for African American in the past. Then just tonight on your African diaspora, you stated that you will look and say at the plan that Vice President Kamala Harris have for black men to enhance them. Then stated, if I'm correct, that it will not fly in so many words because she's mentioning the word black men, and you said that she should state freedmen and say, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, I did say that, even though I didn't get into that part of it tonight. You say, so what is it, Bishop Scott? Should she try again to help African Americans or not? He said, what I'm really confused about it is mostly young black men stating that Donald Trump gave them money, which is far from the truth. And say, as the moon is from the earth, Donald Trump just signed and say what President Barack Obama already had in place in the stimulus package. Donald Trump did not do anything for anybody, especially for black Americans, except himself and his rich billionaires with massive tax breaks for the very wealthy like Elon Musk and others. Is they inherited an economy from President Obama, which is pretty good if you are honest. After 8 years cleaning up the Republicans' mess, and in my humble opinion, Donald Trump was the cause of hundreds of thousands of people dying from COVID because he was against science, vaccinations, and in the fact, the entire Republican Party at the time supporting this man, in which I bet that he came down with COVID. I bet that he got the jab. It's over 1 million deaths. It's in which a lot of them might have survived if they had been listening to some madman. Well, if you follow the pandemic like I did very closely, and you listen to a lot of medical professionals that said what the pandemic did was expose people's pre-existing conditions, and pre-existing conditions exacerbated the virus and taking people out of here because a lot of Americans are sickly. That's the reason why COVID got a lot of them. Just be honest with you. And then he say, even mentioning injecting, you talking about the bleach thing, right? Well, who would do some stupidity like that? I mean, y'all know Trump crazy. He said, brother Bishop, well, I don't know why you call me Bishop. My main question is, you really going to sit at home November 5th, 2024? Actually, I am, because I'm going to do early voting next Monday. And other misguided black men and let this psychopath get back in the office. It said that his own staff, many of them are stating, and many other Republicans saying that he's unfit to be our commander in chief and threat to our country. and our allies? Are you going to truly going to vote for? Hold on. Are you truly going to vote for Vice President Tim Walz to set the course for our future and mostly our grandchildren, greats, or are you going to let Trump, a man that has at least 90 plus counts, charged with 39 felonies, destroy our Constitution, in which he stated that he's planning on doing, putting in place Project 2025. This is a complete shield writing me to become a dictator. It's saying which he really wants to become and say that we will not have to vote anymore. Put Vice President Harris in the White House and we can get reparations passed if you vote down ballot tickets. That's a lie. That's cap. It said by Democrats keeping the Senate and increasing it, taking back Congress, and the great John Lewis Voting Rights Act will be passed. The George Floyd police reform will be passed because if you don't, and this is all black men, everybody else is America. If this madman gets in office again, in my humble opinion, and so you think things is bad now, my brother, you haven't seen nothing yet. It is bad. Being a dictatorship, he will open up the gates of hell. Oh God, Trump is that powerful. It's on the American people, in my opinion. And if you think that black men and women is being killed by police officers under Trump, he has already stated in so many words they'll be able to kill people of color just by looking at us. When did he say that? I haven't heard him say that. I truly believe black Black men wake up this time. Uh, it's in the most important election since existing in this country. Oh God, I'm telling you, this is a straight shield that wrote me, guys and ladies. It said, don't expect someone to just give you something for no work of your own. It said, I got proof President Obama and President Biden and Kamala Harris doing just that, putting money in the black communities, creating jobs, helping African Americans start more businesses than others. It said, making the playing field, I said, more levy through banks, millions and millions of dollars to HBCUs. Nancy Pelosi, really? That lady you mentioning? And the Democrat Party has brought up legislation and the NAACP is a boule organization. They don't care about us, about reparations, but it's the mean spirit Republican Party that keeps shooting it down. So stop blaming the Democrats and put the blame where it is. Vote for Vice President Harris. Don't be a sexist. Oh, God. This is a straight shield, but I'm reading this for a reason. It says stereotype and be smart and help yourself and country. Vote. I'm going to vote. Don't worry. Yours truly, Lorenzo, and man like others, believe me, who fought for this Constitution, and saying, I know it's not a perfect, and say, but nothing is but God Almighty. Said, my dad operated a machine gun and one aircraft in World War II, and I had uncles, a brother in Vietnam. I'm sure do not want this freak, and say, in my humble opinion, that don't respect men and women in uniform is calling us suckers and losers and disrespected a war hero, Senator John McCain, and that he had the audacity to state that the Medal of Freedom is better than the Medal of Honor, gave the Medal of Freedom to such people like Rush Limbaugh and Jim Jordan. Give me a break. He keep calling me Honorable Bishop. I'm not nobody's bishop. Please stop rhetoric. Vote. Yours sincerely, Lorenzo. And all that to say this. If you are 70 years old and your hope is in Vice President Harris, you failed, sir. You failed. You failed. Let's talk about this. You're 70 years old. I shouldn't be fighting these battles. If you are 70 years old and your hope is in Vice President Harris, you failed, sir. You failed. You failed. Let's talk about this. You're 70 years old. I shouldn't be fighting these battles. I should not be fighting no battles I'm fighting today. If your generation, sir, would have took care of business and stood on business and got our economics right, then people like myself could just walk into those economics. If y'all been fighting to close the wealth gap, but see, y'all generation, sir, y'all got a little freedom and y'all start partying, BSing, and sleeping with white women. Okay? And y'all threw away the black businesses. Y'all wanted to go shop with the white people. Y'all just forgot all our stuff. And now we had to start over from scratch. It was y'all generation that was cool with the symbolism and not substance. So don't get mad at me or don't get mad at others in our community who say, no, I don't want just some freaking symbolism. I want substance. I want my children to be better off than me. And I want my grandchildren to be better off than me too. And how they're going to be better off when the party that you support, sir, imported millions upon millions upon millions of men in here, men, military age men in this country that's trying to compete for jobs over black men for lower wages than black men. You understand? You're not thinking about any of that. You can care less because you're getting your Social Security. Let's say, okay, you say you retired out of the military. You're getting your military check. You're getting your Social Security check. You good. If the majority of black men was getting a Social Security check and a government pension check, we wouldn't talk about much either. You're comfortable. And see, that's the problem with people like at your age, sir. You're comfortable. You grew up in a time period where the American dream was there for you. When you got out of the military and all of that, you probably had a VA loan or something like that. Black people had homes, not apartments, homes in your age bracket, right? A lot of you are still even sitting on those homes. Matter of fact, your generation, they say, is holding on to the majority of the wealth. You won't give it to your children. You won't let it go. Your generation don't even want to let go power and let the young people come in and do what they got to do to fundamentally change America. So, sir, no, sir. We got to look out for our generation, and y'all had y'all chance to help us out. Y'all didn't want to. Not saying you as an individual, we talking about the collective of you. Y'all didn't do that. So now we stuck on our own as a community. We stuck. And we're going to make things right. We're going to make it right. But the deal is, what I'm saying, just stay out of our way. Just stay out of our way. You had your chance to help. You didn't do it. Cool.
Excuse. Sagar and Jetty made a decision a long time ago, and he decided, like many people who were in his position, that they would try to align themselves closer to whiteness because that is what is going to benefit them in the long run. I've told people this before, and friends of mine have explained this very well. What people have to understand, when people immigrate to this country, whether they are a person of color or not, their goal is to achieve the American dream. Now, some of you guys are like, well, we're all trying to do that. Yeah, but let me get there. We're going to get there. Their goal is to achieve the American dream when they come here. And to them, the best way of doing that is to look and see who is doing well in this country. And people are told this before they even get here. That's what people have to understand. I know my friend told me all of it, revealed it all to me. So I know. So when they come, they see who's doing the best here, white Americans. So in order to achieve the American dream, they see that they need to align themselves with the group that is doing the best economically in this country. So that's what they strive to do. They're not trying to align with us. Now, you don't have to align with us. But to say that our struggle or talking about struggle or talking about race and what we've experienced in this country is nonsense and is ridiculous. Yeah, you sound anti-Black to me, Sagar. And I don't need to listen to Ta-Nehisi Coates to point that out. It's your rhetoric. The same rhetoric that he had during the George Floyd protest. And I honestly don't understand how Crystal can just sit right there next to him knowing he has these views. It just like that to me is just mind-boggling. So let me ask you a question. And if you look up his background, you would see, has Saagar Enjeti been in a position in this country where he's had to struggle financially? Does he come from a lower income family? Does he come from a poor family? No. So he is already a step ahead of a lot of you when he came here because his family was in a class that yours was not. Do you understand where I'm coming from? So he already has that going for him. Let's continue.
That said, I don't even like him, and I would not open with a question like that, because that's wild. It would be an interrogation of the book itself, and not to say something like that would belong, what did he say, in an extremist
the backpack of an extremist.
That's an insane thing to say, and especially considering that that guy didn't disclose a lot of his own biases whenever it comes to Israel. So that's another problem, I think, that was going into that. What, do you want to listen to the rest of it?
Yeah. I mean,
let me answer this for a second. I understand that he was born in the US, but his family immigrated here. So what I am saying is that oftentimes when they come here, in particular, depending on what caste system his family is from, they are already a step ahead of a lot of us. I said the same thing about Vivek Ramaswamy. This is what a lot of people don't understand. Vivek Ramaswamy went around telling the country that his parents came here with nothing. That was a lie. His parents came here with college degrees, and his parents came here with enough money to be able to get housing. Some of you can't get housing. Some of you living with other people because you can't afford to get housing. So think about that for a second. And I hear a lot of people make this statement. My parents came here with nothing. No, a lot of these people's parents came here with college degrees. So they were already ahead of you.
and I just want to respond a little bit to
Sure, go.
I mean, I disagree with the race pessimist view, but I don't know, to be so like call him a villain and evil and like causing every racial problem in America is crazy.
Oh, hold on.
That essay was the godfather of the anti-racist movement.
I mean, he's allowed to have a perspective and write what he wants. That doesn't make him a villain.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And to acknowledge the racism in America and that this.
Let's pause. So Crystal told him that this doesn't make him a villain. She said that Ta-Nehisi Coates can write about whatever he wants. That doesn't make him a villain. Saagar Enjeti goes, yes, it does. I thought Saagar Enjeti was for free speech. I thought that was supposed to be, isn't that like a thing? Like, I don't understand this. Yes, it does. It does make him a villain. It makes him a villain because he's writing about his experience. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a black man. Like, don't get it twisted. Yes, he is a part of a certain class that I'm not a part of. Yes, he is very well known. He can rub elbows with people in circles that I would never be in the same room with. Yes, But at the end of the day, Ta-Nehisi Coates is still a Black man. And his experience living in this country is going to be different than Sagar's experience. Sagar seems to have a problem admitting that. This doesn't make this guy evil, man. Ay, ay, ay.
This continues to be a legacy that matters today. There's not like that's a noble thing to do. So the fact he comes to a different conclusion than you or I, of course that's noble. No. That he comes to a different conclusion than you or I don't know, you're villainizing him in a way that's not that different from the way Tony DeCoppolo is here on CBS.
I would say to his face, and I also wouldn't call him an extremist. I would say I think your case for reparations was the reason that we have all this DEI bullshit, and that you effectively radicalize a bunch of white liberals into thinking that racism is the single biggest problem.
You would blame.
Pause. So let me tell you where the DEI stuff came from. Jesus Christ. When I was working at Boston University, that was when George Floyd was murdered, right? So that was also during the pandemic and all that stuff. I know we don't want to do a flashback, but sometimes we got to go back there. And we had the lockdown. So it was a very tough time. It was after like the George Floyd protest. That was when Boston University, the president of BU, and it was actually Ibram Kendi. And I've talked about Professor Kendi on the show before. And look, I've had criticisms for Professor Kendi. That was when they got together and they decided that they were going to host this summit. It was a webinar university-wide. And that was when they started implementing the diversity and inclusion offices more rapidly throughout the university. However, prior to George Floyd, we already had an Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. That already existed prior to Ta-Nehisi Coates' reparations essay and prior to the murder of George Floyd. However, after George Floyd, they did increase those positions throughout the campus. Okay, there he is. Okay, just double checking. Okay, all righty, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, Dr. Shiva, whenever you're ready, just let me know. If you can give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. All right, guys, my special guest tonight is Dr. Shiva. He is running for president for 2024 as an independent. You've seen him on here before. Welcome back, Dr. Shiva. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Sabby?
I'm good. I'm good. It's getting down to the wire, so I'm interested to hear a little bit more about your campaign. I do want to start off with this. So I heard that you are on the ballot in Massachusetts. So I want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, in every state, your listeners may know, Sabby, they make it, they have an onerous task in every state that you have to do certain statutory requirements, right, to get on the ballot. For example, in California, you have to get 300,000 signatures to get on the ballot, right? But the reality is, or you can get as a write-in, but even in California, you have to submit 108 electors. So I think it's very, very important to people to understand how, I would say 95% of people don't even understand on November 5th, we're not voting for the president.
What do you mean by that?
It's a good, yeah. So so on November 5th, you are voting for the office of senator, office of House of Representatives. But when it comes to the president, this is something that is very easy to get forgotten because they don't teach it in civics. I would say even most judges and a lot of lawyers don't even know this. It's unfortunate. And we've learned this from the lawsuits we've had to file, right? So when you run for president, according to the 12th Amendment, right, the way the United States was structured was there was always this deep conflict between how much rights should the states have versus the federal government. Right. So when the 13 colonies came together, they created this thing called the United States government. Prior to that, the states, the colonies had their own governance systems, right? They had the judiciary, they had their own state legislative assemblies, and they also had their own governor, right? But when they decided to come together, they created this thing called the United States government. And as a part of creating that United States government, each of these states would get representation, right? They would get House of Representatives, which was a direct function of what was your population. So Massachusetts, I believe we get what? I think 9, right? It's roughly about 700, 800, every 700, 800,000 people, we get 1 House of Representatives, right? So we get 9, plus we get 2 senators. So those 2 people from each state were sent to the legislature at the federal government. And then they also had something else called the office of the president. Right? Now, the president, they didn't want a king to be created, right? So they didn't want everyone by popular vote selecting a king. So this was a big fight between Hamilton and Madison, and they decided we're going to have electors. So in every state, you're not electing the president of the United States, you're electing a group of electors. So for example, in Massachusetts, you could have your electors, I could have mine. So how many electors are there? There's typically the same numbers and number of House of Representatives plus the 2 senators. So Massachusetts, it's 11. Okay. So 11 electors come together, independent citizens who have to be resident of Massachusetts. Typically, they have certain qualifications, resident, maybe 25 years of age. The state legislature sets those requirements. And those electors say, hey, we want Sabby to be our candidate for president. In the event our slate wins the office of elector election, which is on November 5th. So you may have your electors, 11 people. I have my electors. Jason here can have his electors. So that means there are 3 potential pledge candidates running. But who is running for the office, Sabby, is not me or you or Jason. It's not Donald Trump, Kamala Harris running for president, or Dr. Shiva. It is the electors who have said that if we get elected this slate, then on December 17th, in every state, we will decide that we're going to, let's say the electors of Kamala Harris get elected, they're going to vote for Kamala Harris. Okay, on December 17th. So that's why they were so easily able to switch Biden with Harris, because the reality is those electors can choose whoever they want as their pledge candidate in the future, right? So in every state, you're not voting for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or Dr. Shiva. You're voting for the slate of electors who have said at some point in the future, December 17th, which is always the Wednesday after the second Monday in December, the legislature meets and they count the votes. Oh, Dr. Shiva got 50% of the votes. His electors win. Then they come to the legislature and they said, we're going to vote for Dr. Shiva. But they don't have to. They could switch. There's a thing called faithless electors. Anyway, the reason I'm sharing this with you is that in Massachusetts, we had to get a set of electors who said they're going to pledge to vote for Dr. Shiva if that slate is elected. Now, up until 1900, do you know they would list all the names of the electors? So if you had 11, I had 11, I had 11, on the Massachusetts ballot would appear 33 names.
To the agreement that the swarm, as I call it, struck with Israel. The creation of Israel was an illegal nation that was done. Zionism is equivalent to Nazism, which is the same as Brahmanism in the Hindu system, which is believing a small set of people are better than everyone else. Now, I grew up in that caste system where the Brahmins, most of the Indians you see here, including Vivek the fucking snake, excuse my language, okay? And most of the Indians you see here are all Brahmins. And they're the people who spit and call me the N-word in India. So the fact that my parents made it here, Sabby, is quite 1 in a trillion. And so when I went to MIT, all the Indians there were trying to figure out my last name. And I may have mentioned this before, most of my friends at MIT, when I went there, were poor whites, poor blacks, and Hispanics. Hispanics. They weren't the Indians because they were fucking racist. Frankly, tell you that. So in the Hindu system created a political ideology called Brahmanism, which said this, the few are better than the everyone else. Zionism is the same thing. That
We
if you,
can't. Your mic is staticky.
you go back. It's the same philosophy. So I take this very personally for me.
Because Zionism is no different than Nazism. It's a political ideology which has nothing to do with the religious base that it comes from. And it was created to justify butchering of people, subjugation of people, and the genocide of people. And right now, if you consider what's going on, going to the larger historic piece, the Russian people, if you look back at history, were the first people on the planet in 1917 where they had a bottoms-up revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution. And we can have a longer discussion about it. But it was the first time working people rose and it set off a bomb all over the world. Every country wanted to invade Russia. In fact, the United States sent 7,000 troops. But in the soul, at some level of Russia, I'm not talking about Putin or the leadership, the Russian people lost 25 million people fighting Nazis. A lot of people don't remember this. They're the ones who won World War II. And it was a Russian people who remembered what the Nazis did. And that's why when the Ukraine war started, it was the eastern part of Russia, which was bullshit at the United States putting in people like Zelensky. And you know what happened in 2014. So Putin, from his background, you know, having seen his parents being attacked by Nazism, there's a big issue here between Nazis and what took place of the Russian people fighting in Ukraine. But in my view, the United States elites, I have a board up here. Russia has $75 trillion worth of natural resources. The United You know, if you look at our little cards, this is what we've handed out millions of these, right? It's a very simple card. It's got lifespan going down, cost of living going up. So if we want to bring cost of living down, you need to castrate Israel. You need to cut it off, all of it. And cost of living will come down because we'll stop printing money to support that war, that genocidal war machine.
So one of the things I did notice, I disagree with you about Dr. Stein being a Zionist, by the way. But one of the things I did notice with your platform is that there are a number of things here. There's legislative priorities. Of course, there's the economy, there's healthcare. But I noticed, similar to other politicians, which I have criticized them for not having this, I don't see a Black agenda. So for you, if you were president, what would be your agenda for Black America?
Well, I've always said this. If you go look at my videos, it's about infrastructure. The movement of the civil rights movement was always providing infrastructure to the inner cities. That was hijacked. And we've never provided infrastructure in inner cities still. If you look, I grew up in Newark. Look, I grew up in Patterson. Most of my friends growing up were Black and still you know, I have more affiliations with those people and my people than I do with the quote unquote Indians or the elites that I grew up, were forced to grow up within the last 3 years of high school. But the bottom line is that infrastructure in the inner cities has still not been delivered. If you go to Newark, New Jersey today, the same infrastructure I saw in 1978, 1980, growing up, it hasn't changed that much. If you go to most of the inner cities where predominantly it's black people and poor whites, infrastructure has never been addressed, Abby. What we have addressed are issues that are the Band-Aid solution. So for example, when the civil rights movement took place, people like Malcolm X, one of my heroes, he wanted bottom line infrastructure. And what the elites ended up doing, the white liberals took over those movements and they made it about affirmative action, which is necessary, I believe. Affirmative action was a necessary
has not been repaired. So even if
I have more affiliations with.
We started a newspaper called The Student. Dean Hope was fired when I came in 1981 to MIT. This was during the Reagan era. Reagan came and he wanted to wipe out all the gains of the civil rights movements. So most of my friends came from the inner cities, be it in East LA or the inner cities of Detroit. And if you remember this, Sabby, you may, if you go back to the heart of this, in my view, from my own upbringing, education is the ultimate way that you get people out of their surroundings. That the way you create wealth. That's what my parents taught us. Now at MIT in 1968, there were only 2 black graduates. One of them was Shirley Jackson. You may know her. If you walk down the hall of MIT, her picture's up. When she was delivering her PhD dissertation to a room full of white men, she threw her thesis down. She goes, "It's unbelievable that I'm the only black woman here." Well, the next year they let in 15 black students. And MIT knew, by the way, many universities did this. They knew those students were going to fail because when they came in, they didn't have the basic knowledge to do calculus, math, because their schools were so decrepit in the inner cities. So anyway, those 15 students who came in 1969-70, they occupied the MIT faculty club. And they said, "You know what? You guys let us in here to have black faces in high places, but we're going to fail, and then you'll say we were quote unquote dumb and kick us out." But those students took over the faculty club and they forced MIT to institute programs, infrastructure at MIT. So tutoring programs, et cetera. And these are big wins. Whole bunch of things. But those students did it. It didn't come from politicians. It was bottoms up. So when I came to MIT in 81, there were still remnants of that. Reagan came in and he wanted to eliminate all these programs, right? Eliminate these tutoring programs, et cetera.
You have static, but I do, for the sake of time, I do want to just jump in for a second and say this.
Can't hear you. Hold on. I got to bring you back. Sorry about that. So, to me, this has not been a black agenda. It's been something I've been fighting all my life.
Savvy, and that view is infrastructure.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. I have to step in here because we've heard the infrastructure story for quite some time, and I'm not saying that that's not an issue, but the reality is the racial wealth gap, and the only way to fix that, which data has proven this time and time again, is reparations for descendants of slavery in this country. And one of the differences between your candidacy and other candidates that are running outside of the duopoly is that they do have a reparations plan. So the reason why I asked you about a black agenda is because I noticed on your website, I did not see that. And when I hear this phrase of infrastructure, I feel like, again, that is in my opinion, what I've heard, again, this is the same type of talking point that I do hear, particularly from elites and, people that are from these elite academic institutions that live here in Massachusetts. And And they truly believe that all you need to do is fix infrastructure. But the reality is there is a debt that is owed to descendants of slavery in this country that has not been paid. And that repair does need to be made. And it's been made for Japanese Americans that were part of the internment camps. It's been made for those that were Holocaust survivors, as those groups should have been repaired. But the descendants of slavery in this country have not been repaired. They have not been paid for unpaid labor, and the wealth that was stolen from descendants of slavery in this country has not been repaired. So even if you implement and repair the infrastructure, you still have the issue of the wealth disparity between the racial groups, and we are still at the bottom. So one of the things that I would
So what's happened is, you're absolutely right. So what's happened, if you look in Boston, you may have seen the report that came out, right, by the Federal Reserve. In the midst of all the liberal elites talking all their bullshit in Boston, the average net worth of a black person is $8. Okay? $8. Elizabeth Warren didn't talk about that in 2015, 2018. You can go look at it. I did. Okay? And the net worth of a white person is $250,000. This is right in Boston. So both of these, to me, both need to be addressed. Okay, reparations and infrastructure, they're not separated. But you cannot
that all you need to do is fix infrastructure. But the reality is there is a debt that is owed to descendants of slavery in this country that has not been paid. And that repair does need to be made. And it's been made for Japanese Americans that were part of the internment camps. It's been made for those that were Holocaust survivors, as those groups should have been repaired. But the descendants of slavery in this country have not been repaired. They have not been paid for unpaid labor, and the wealth that was stolen from descendants of slavery in this country has not been repaired. So even if you implement and repair the infrastructure, you still have the issue of the wealth disparity between the racial groups, and we are still at the bottom. So one of the things that I would
So what's happened is, you're absolutely right. So what's happened, if you look in Boston, you may have seen the report that came out, right, by the Federal Reserve. In the midst of all the liberal elites talking all their bullshit in Boston, the average net worth of a Black person is $8. Okay? $8. Elizabeth Warren didn't talk about that.
And when I hear this phrase of infrastructure, I feel like, again, that is in my opinion, what I've heard, again, this is the same type of talking point that I do hear, particularly from elites and, people that are from these elite academic institutions that live here in Massachusetts. And they truly believe that all you need to do is fix infrastructure. But the reality is there is a debt that is owed to descendants of slavery in this country that has not been paid. And that repair does need to be made. And it's been made for Japanese Americans that were part of the internment camps. It's been made for those that were Holocaust survivors, as those groups should have been repaired. But the descendants of slavery in this country have not been repaired. They have not been paid for unpaid labor, and the wealth that was stolen from descendants of slavery in this country has not been repaired. So even if you implement and repair the infrastructure, you still have the issue of the wealth disparity between the racial groups, and we are still at the bottom. So one of the things that I would
so what's happened is, you're absolutely right. So what's happened, if you look in Boston, you may have seen the report that came out, right, by the Federal Reserve. In the midst of all the liberal elites talking all their bullshit in Boston, the average net worth of a Black person is $8. Okay? $8. Elizabeth Warren didn't talk about that in 2015, 2018. You can go look at it. I did. Okay? And the net worth of a white person is $250,000. This is right in Boston. So both of these, to me, both need to be addressed. Okay? Reparations and infrastructure. They're not separated. But you cannot just do infrastructure and not address this wealth inequity, nor can you address just the wealth inequity and not address reparations. I think both are necessary. And to me, the infrastructure piece, in my view, but I'm not going to be like a liberal fucking elite like Booby Kennedy, just trying to please Black people. Oh yeah, I'm into reparations, right? Because a lot of people just say that, but they don't actually want to talk about the fundamental issues of implementing that and how that's going to happen. And how do you make sure that whether it's very poor Black people. And by the way, the wages that have occurred over the last 20 years, if you look at it, I think Black people's wages on average were 18K. White people's wages, like middle class poor whites, were around 40. Their wages have also dropped down. So in a broad sense, what's going on is a complete, Black people's wages have not increased broadly. And there is the issue of addressing.
I try to tell you how to do your job. I don't try to try to tell you about that. This country have not been repaired. They have not been paid for unpaid labor, and the wealth that was stolen from descendants of slavery in this country has not been repaired. So even if you implement and repair the infrastructure,
there is the issue of addressing that, but you have to do both, in my view. So I'm not going to give you, oh yeah, I'm into reparations now because Booby Kennedy. Both are good. That you don't want, that goes over your head.
That is not what I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job. On this show multiple times. I'm very well aware of that. And I don't mean for you to get defensive. But the reason,
yeah, I think the reality is. You look at the history of those people, and have they actually been fighting on the ground on racism? I have. You can go look at my history.
I think you're bringing up two different things, and I've seen people do this before. Again, I have called out those people on this show multiple times. My viewers be the first to let you know. So I'm very well aware of that. But I think you are bringing up two different things. 1 minute where I was mentioning to you reparations, which is a debt that is owed, and now you bring up fighting for racism and fighting against
both things. Both things, Sabby. No,
there's a difference. Well, let me finish what I was saying. There is a difference between racial justice and a debt that is owed. And that's just what I want to get across to you. No, right, they are two different things.
You're trying to put them into two different buckets. I'm saying they're interrelated.
The reason why I'm putting them into two different buckets is because
so the reparations at MIT that need to be owed was that you have a bunch of people who came who were never given infrastructure, at all. So the debt
that is not how reparations work, Dr. Shiva.
No. That is your definition. definition of reparations.
No,
okay?
Dr. Shiva, with all due
That's your
respect,
definition.
listen, with all due respect, I don't try to tell you how to do science. So I would really appreciate it if you don't try to tell me.
That's like saying, I haven't, wait,
No,
Sabby.
I
You're looking
don't,
at a dark-skinned human being.
I don't, Dr. Shiva, I do not try to tell you how to do your job. I don't try to try to tell you about that.
What's my job?
What I am saying, Dr. Shiva, what I am
what's
trying
my job,
to
Sabby?
interrupt me again, I'm going to mute you. What I am trying to explain to you is this.
If that's how you want to talk to me,
you cannot sit here. You cannot sit here
I don't think you talk
and try
like
to tell me. You cannot sit here and try to tell me what reparations is. I know what it is.
You can't. Indians were the first indentured servants in the United States. So don't talk to me about that. Lower caste Indians. My great grandfather was a fucking slave. So don't talk to me. About that, you know better than me. You're trying to say that you know better, and I don't know what reparations is.
What I am trying to say to you is,
and don't try to bring other people and compare me to other people.
I am trying to, Dr. Shiva, with all due respect, you don't know everything.
Don't try to put me
into a bucket. You don't know everything. No, you do not.
Oh, and neither do you, Sabby.
I don't claim to.
Because you have a dark skin, I have a dark skin, doesn't mean
there are certain things.
Your racism is different
than mine. This is not about skin. In color.
Yes, it
is. This is about lineage. No, it is not.
Oh, really? And I don't know about lineage?
You don't know.
Bullshit.
Dr. Shiva.
You don't know my journey.
Dr. Shiva. What I'm trying
we grew up under slavery and indentured servitude. You don't know about that.
I am not talking about India.
Then get to the point and don't try to bucket me.
I am talking about a debt that is owed to descendants of slavery in this country. I am not talking about India.
I'm not talking about India. I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the United States.
I am talking about a debt.
Let me tell you what you want to do. You want to say Cornel West is for reparations. And he's a black guy, and you want to bucket me as I'm not. And that is what you're trying to do.
When did I say that?
Well, why are you saying that when I say that both? Why are you saying when I saying both are good that you don't want that goes over your head?
That is not what I'm saying. That I didn't say it goes over my head. What I am saying is it is very important on this show. No. It's very important on this show that we don't intermix the two, because what has happened is people will say, if you cut me off again, I swear to God, I will end this interview.
Well,
I'm not kidding.
Don't threaten me. You can end it.
I'm not kidding. No, Dr. Shiva, I'm not kidding. And honestly, you're acting like an arrogant jackass. I'm telling you right now, you're acting like an arrogant jackass. Oh, I am very familiar. I am very familiar. You have no respect right now.
You're yelling at me.
Listen to what you had to say, but do not come on here and disrespect me.
Listen to anything I have to say. You kept interrupting me.
That's it. Goodbye. Jesus Christ.